When people think of the ocean, they think fish. But did you know that this is so much more than that? The Philippines' exclusive economic zone covers an estimated 2.2 million square kilometers of water. This makes up 82% of our territories. And yet, it was only this year when the Philippine Rural Reconstruction Movement defined the Philippines as a maritime archipelagic nation or MANA. In this three-part special, we explore what the blue economy is about and dive deep into the Philippines' unexplored potential. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno, and this is The Way Forward. In this episode, we sit with movers, shakers, and thought leaders who will give us an overview of how the blue economy impacts our national security. Welcome to The Way Forward. Join us as we discuss and investigate key economic issues impacting the Philippines and Asia. Joining us today is the current National Security Advisor, Dr. Clarita Carlos. The blue economy right now is something that's been a trigger for also international cooperation. Would you consider this platform as something that can be effective when we look at, security issues?
Ayun. In fact, that's one of the best platforms because how can you quarrel with environmental protection, conservation?
Do you think that obtaining a favorable arbitral award is something that would be effective in settling that dispute when it comes to the West Philippine Sea?
I think the president has paved the way for that future trajectory of where we're going. So he's saying, let's just continue dialoguing, constructive dialogue and the like, and diplomacy.
What is the significance then of the UNCLOS when it comes to determining these overlapping claims?
Well, UNCLOS is very important because it provided the regulatory framework for colliding claims.
Considering that even after we've obtained a favorable arbitral award, the building of facilities in the disputed areas, they were continued by China.
That's a main issue, where things are being done de facto, and that becomes the basis for whatever negotiations might happen. By the way, it's not just our issue here in our region, but all over the world for that matter. That's something that might require an international regulatory framework, which we don't have right now.
What do you think are key allies that we need to consider? So right now we have Philippines with the ASEAN, and then there's the Quad.
We're looking for a certain trajectory where we are trying to get as many actors to participate. That will be the low politics area where there are less tensions and there are less stakes. Like, you move into territory and sovereignty, and that's a high politics area. It's like the survival of the country itself.
The Mutual Defense Treaty, EDCA, as having significant roles in maintaining security, and especially in the tricky parts where maritime security is also involved.
Well, pacta sunt servanda, isn't it? Treaties have to be followed. Rebus sic stantibus simply means that things have changed. The Philippines in 1951, when the Mutual Defense Treaty was ratified, 52, no? This is now a different Philippines. We're one of the emerging economies in the world.
But when you talk about the other thing that has massively changed is China being an economic power. So do you think there's something that needs to be changed as well when it comes to our approach, when it comes to diplomacy or the types of treaties that we have?
Why are we always talking about changing ourselves? How about changing the other actors? So I want China, who is threatening to be a superpower, if it is not already, to think about us. The President himself declared that China is a partner, it's a neighbor. So why not cajole China or get China to think of treating us like we are really part of their shared prosperity? I like to ride on what Xi Jinping talks about. You want to be a superpower, abide by international law. Let's also talk about cajoling China to change also the way they treat us, the rest of us in the region. Yeah, let it be part of that regime of laws which we will have to deal with. Let's deal with low politics area, less tension, and then we engender goodwill. There's trust, there's confidence, And then, when it is time that it spills over into the high politics area of territory and sovereignty, we would have planted the goodwill there. At least that's the continuing hope. In terms of our maritime security, let us provide our military there, our civilian Coast Guard, with all the wherewithal to really do their jobs. And that's the reason why I like the idea of a regional fishing agreement. Hindi yung pwedeng ginawa ng China na bigla na lang siyang nag-declare ng holiday, di ba? In-involve mo naman yung fisherman namin na bigla mo na lang hindi rin pinaisda, di ba? I'm glad the president took the helm of the DA because that's food security. And people thought that I had set aside the external threat as part of national security. I did not.
Is there anything that you think needs to be included in this discourse when we're talking about maritime issues, the blue economy, that is not being talked about yet?
The US and China are trying to deny each other of the region that should be the most robust, the most progressive economies, including us for that matter. And I hope they will not make the region like their playground for their proxy wars, if I may conclude on that note.
How do you think the Philippines figures in that hegemony?
You don't choose. Play smart. Define what your goals are as a nation. Which of these, in fact, China is going to provide? Which one the US will provide? Play your game well. This is now a new Philippines, a newfound confidence about who we are. We can be the leader of Southeast Asia, Karen.
When it comes to having hope as a currency, is there anything that you're seeing as different at the geopolitical level?
Well, okay. Let me preface my comment by declaring, first off, that this is not to carry favor with the President of the Republic. But yes, it's a pleasant surprise to see that the President has a vision of who we should be as a nation. We are going to have what? Yes, a roller coaster for the next 2,000 days, but it would be a good ride with the President at the helm.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Secretary and Professor Clarita Carlos.
Thank you, Karen. Always a delight to be interviewed by you. Thank you.
And this is the way forward. When we return, we discuss key solutions and insights from the local government perspective with Baguio Mayor Benji Magalong.
PRRM has spent over 7 decades in rural development. We were biased in favor of farmers, and the fisherfolk told us, food is not just rice, it is also fish. The Philippines is more than 300,000 square kilometers of land. Our exclusive economic zone is 2.2 million square kilometers. We are the 15th largest fishing nation in the world. The Philippines is a maritime and archipelagic nation, or MANA. Mana natin ito. We must defend it.
Yung West Philippines, atin yun dahil nasa loob ng ating par. Ayun, talaga dapat niya kausapin yung presidente ng China para mag-usap sila para kung ano man ang mapag-usapan nila, mapalis talaga yung Chinese vessel doon sa nagbabantay doon.
This is the way forward. Joining us today is Benji Magalong, who is mayor of Baguio City since 2019. He retired with the rank of Philippine Police Deputy Director General as Deputy Chief for Operations. He was also chairman of the PNP Board of Inquiry on the Mama Sapano incident. Mayor Benji, welcome. So your career has spanned decades of being involved in national security, and now as mayor, you also take care of the security of the constituents of Baguio City. So it's both national and domestic. And for issues that are international, such as the conflict in the West Philippine Sea, how do you think local government units should deal with taking care of local constituents, but also making sure that whenever there's an incident, it doesn't really incite a conflict at an international level?
By the way, Karen, we're also impacted indirectly by the ongoing issue on the West Philippine Sea. Prices of fishes are increasing, and the number of varieties of fishes that are coming into the city of Baguio becoming more limited now. Unlike in the past we see that there are a lot of varieties of fishes coming, especially from the Kalayaan Island group or from the Scarborough Shoal. And local governments should find ways on how to address this, because fishermen are very, very much dependent on their livelihood, especially if they're getting their products from the West Philippine Sea. From what I've been reading, not only are fishermen from Zambales or Ilocos region or Pangasinan affected, even fishermen from Cavite, as far as Mindoro Occidental, they're also impacted by this controversy now that's happening in the West Philippine Sea. So the only way we will be able to, resolve the issue is through dialogue, constant dialogues, low-key dialogues. Besides, our only objective there is to allow our fishermen to go to that area and proceed with their livelihood. And second is, probably a joint exploration allegedly on the oil. That there was a study made by the U.S. Geological, Service stating therein that there are about 1 billion barrels of oil and 1 trillion, natural gas in West Philippine Sea.
What do you think of treaties as a solution, like the Mutual Defense Treaty?
Well, this is also another option that we can undertake, consensus building. Establishing strategic alliances with countries like United States, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, Korea, countries that have strong naval capability.
Is there a maritime police, and if so, is this something that you think needs to be strengthened structurally?
But the Philippine National Police doesn't really address external threats.
So who has that role when it comes to external threats?
Well, we give it to the Philippine Navy. That's the role of the Philippine Navy and probably the Philippine Coast Guard. Philippine Navy mission function is to provide support to the naval needs or maritime needs of the armed forces of the Philippines in terms of internal security and terrorism. Philippine Coast Guard is more on maritime safety, disaster search and rescue, maritime security. And on the other hand, Philippine National Police Maritime is more on law enforcement.
Do you think when we invest in maritime power, it's also a way to invest in extracting and utilizing resources from our territorial waters?
Yeah, I agree, Karen. So, we really have to make sure that we have the capability also to protect our own interests in the West Philippine Sea. In fact, we have been receiving a lot of complaints from our own fishermen that they are not allowed to fish in that area. Second is we have been receiving consistent reports that around 170 to 200 Chinese vessels are sighted regularly on a daily basis in that area.
What would be some of the tips perhaps that you can impart to local governments that are in the coastlines to help them, perform better as local governments, considering the issues they deal with, including threats to the sea?
I would encourage these mayors, especially those affected by the West Philippine Sea issue, learn more about crisis negotiation and crisis management. Second is there are a lot of alternative livelihood programs that they can actually implement in their own locality, like, for example, product development, establishing a value chain.
And lastly, what do you think of the role of local governments when it comes to initiating and seizing these opportunities? The Supreme Court's Mandanas ruling gave more power to local governments.
Yes, autonomy is the right approach, game changer. But for us, local government, we feel that we're shortchanged. The money, the increase in budget, the increase on the NTA will only cover the devolved functions. So, as I've said, let us just wait and see.
Thank you, Mayor Benji. We certainly learned a lot from your wisdom, from decades of experience, both at the national and local level. Again, Mayor Benjamin Magalong, thank you for joining us at The Way Forward. This is The Way Forward. When we return, we discuss foreign policy and the West Philippine Sea with Ambassador Rosario Manalo.
PRRM has spent over 7 decades in rural development. We were biased in favor of farmers, and the fisherfolk told us, food is not just rice, it is also fish. The Philippines is more than 300,000 square kilometers of land. Our exclusive economic zone is 2.2 million square kilometers. We are the 15th largest fishing nation in the world. The Philippines is a maritime and archipelagic nation, or MANA. MANA natin ito. We must defend it.
Yung Yung West Philippine Sea naman, matagal na namang inaangkin ng Pilipinas. Kaya mas sinasabi namin, kami mga isda, atin pa rin yung West Philippine Sea. Hindi yung atin na, inaagaw pa rin nila. Pero pag tayo naman yung papasok, hindi naman nila payagan. Kaya malaking problema to sa usapin ng Pilipinas.
This is the way forward. Joining us today is Ambassador Rosario Manalo. Ambassador Manalo is the first Filipina to pass the Philippines Career Foreign Service Officers Examination. She was Undersecretary of Foreign Affairs and was in charge of international economic relations. Welcome, Ambassador Manalo. Thank you for joining us. The Philippines is surrounded by large bodies of water within its territory. But why is the West Philippine Sea significant?
Because the West Philippine Sea is territorial waters of the Philippines. It is an extension of the Philippines' sovereignty from the outermost island, 200 nautical miles outward.
What is the exclusive economic zone?
The entire territory is an exclusive economic zone, which means that no outsider can come in there to harvest the fruit without the permission of the government of the Republic of the Philippines.
What is the distinction between the two, sovereign rights and sovereignty?
Sovereignty is an element of a state. If you're asked, are you a state? The Republic of the Philippines, of course we are a state because we meet all the requirements to be a state, and one of them is sovereignty. Sovereign right is if you're a sovereign state, you have every right to exercise that right within the territorial water or land, the territorial designated extensions, and that's the exercise of a sovereign right. Sovereignty is the source of our sovereign rights.
What is UNCLOS?
The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, in which the Philippines participated, it is a convention that has to do on the management of the territorial waters of all countries, particularly archipelagic countries all over the world. When it was finally adopted, Article 9, when we were going to ratify the convention, we opted out of implementing or being bound by Article 9 of UNCLOS. Article 9 provides for settlement of dispute, and we thought that whatever dispute we have with the land, with the waters, should always be settled by us under the United Nations Charter, under the United Nations Convention, because there we have three ways of settling any conflict or discussions that we cannot agree on.
What are the three modes of settling disputes under the UN Charter?
Well, the first one is what we call the diplomatic process, which is bilateral negotiations between a country X and country B or country Y. Or they could be ABC on one side and XYZ on another side because they have equal arguments on ABC. It's a diplomatic action. The second one is settlement through a legal action, which is the parties to a case will bring it to the International Court of Justice. And the third one is through arbitration.
The decade of ocean science for sustainable development. I thought this was more of just like a milestone.
And that's very good for the Philippines because we are an archipelago surrounded by waters. 7,101 islands surrounded by waters, so huge that the outermost, I said, island, 200 nautical miles outside. Ang laki nyon. There are so many other things that you can produce or you can harvest from the sea that will bring wealth to particularly the women, rural women who are involved there. The thing is, I think women should be given more education, opportunities for education, and more money must be invested for women to be educated in blue economy.
What is your view on utilizing the livable and non-livable resources of our seas?
Well, the livable resources is, of course, receive the protection of the Philippine government.
Then, let's say, our fisherfolk have encounters in the sea that relate to, let's say, fishermen from China.
Now, you know, what we do is negotiate if the conflict is going on. Us, foreign, negotiate not to go on with the conflict. Negotiate to see that it is resolved. And when we have the resolution, negotiate to see that it is maintained.
A lot of the attention in the past has been on, territorial disputes, and the narrative has always been more concentrated on conflict. So, as a seasoned diplomat, what is the value of diplomacy when it comes to the blue economy?
Well, the value of diplomacy when it comes to the blue economy is to prevent war. War brings about the end of our existence. We are an archipelago and surrounded by water, but we have to produce our harvest something from the blue economy. That is food. So that is the contribution of the Department of Foreign Affairs with respect to the production of food, particularly the blue economy. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ambassador Rosario. You are truly an impressive woman, and this has such been an honor. I learned so much from you. This is the way forward. When we return, we discuss what key policies are needed to help secure our blue economy with former Defense Secretary Atty. Gibo, Teodoro.
PRRM has spent over 7 decades in rural development. We were biased in favor of farmers, and the fisherfolk told us, food is not just rice, it is also fish. The Philippines is more than 300,000 square kilometers of land. Our exclusive economic zone is 2.2 million square kilometers. We are the 15th largest fishing nation in the world. The Philippines is a maritime and archipelagic nation, or MANA. Mana natin ito. We must defend it.
Tingali kung makigdialogo ang atong presidente po sa China aron malikayan ang mga dili maayo nga mga panghitabo sa atong relasyon sa China isip mga amigo sa Pilipinas. Dialogo ang gikinahanglan. Ay mga barko nga naa sa laing nasod nga nakasud ko siguro sa Pilipinas sa mga Taiwan, Thailand nga dito ta nag-export ni hinuon nila ang kita hinuon nga mga taga Pilipinas wala hinuon ta makakuha sa kahimo sa atong isda nipalit na hinuon ta nila dito sa tagagawas nga ato man ang isda. Kung pwede maabot akong tingog dito sa kay Presidente Marcos nga moingon ko niya nga kung pwede lang ug unsay ato muoy ato ang ila dit na manghilabot sa ila dili tud ta magpahilabot sa ato ang ato ug gikuha nila ang ato atong bawion.
This is the way forward. Joining us today is former Secretary of National Defense and former Congressman and lawyer, Atty. Gilbert Gibo Teodoro. Welcome, Atty. Gibo. Why is the West Philippine Sea significant?
Well, the West Philippine Sea is really a major source of resources, whether mineral resources, fisheries, and other potential development rights that should redound to the benefit of our people now and for the future. It also will be a staging point for the total development of the other areas of our country because it's not only the West Philippine Sea. You have the Ben-Am Rice, the Philippine Rice, and other coastal areas and areas within the 200-mile EEZ area, which we should explore and exploit responsibly for the development of our future.
What do you think is the best approach to solving the West Philippine Sea issue?
That will take a lot of skilled diplomacy in order to solve that. But one thing is undeniable. The livelihood of our fisher folk is primary because this is survival for them.
The arbitration ruling is something that now the current administration under President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is something that would still be significant.
The arbitration ruling is significant. President Marcos hinted in his SONA that we are very jealous of what is ours. And that arbitration ruling states that UNCLOS is the basis for determining what is ours. And our exclusive rights in the EEZ is clear. Our audience should be the whole world, where we bring out this issue and get public support in a worldwide manner. Multilateralism basically is really important in the sense that it prevents a stronger country, in theory, from bullying a smaller one. Now, having a bilateral approach would mean the more powerful one will prevail. So the balance will be we continue to develop our capabilities in creating a credible deterrent against expansionism, but we continue to pursue those activities which can redound mutually to the benefit of our interests of both people, particularly economically.
Do you think that the Navy and our Marine and Coast Guard should be strengthened more than the Army to protect our coastlines and our marine waters?
The maritime battle space and the airspace more than the land. So it makes sense that really your Air Force and your Navy should be the focus of development. But when you talk about equipping your Air Force and your Navy, you must also concomitantly strengthen your command and control systems, your communication systems that people should think of our cybersecurity systems and information technological systems.
Do you think that it makes sense to have some sort of PPP when it comes to developing certain facilities or infrastructure that is outside of our land area?
I think it should because really is a multiplier, a force multiplier in military terms for our government's infrastructure and other projects. I mean, Coast Guard PPP, you can collocate it with a tourist facility and hit two birds with one stone.
Earlier, we spoke about the multilateral approach as something that the Philippines can also utilize in order to deal with territorial disputes. But how would this affect the Mutual Defense Treaty?
It will enhance the Mutual Defense Treaty because the Mutual Defense Treaty, the only existing mutual defense treaty that the Philippines has is with the United States. So we should have more guarantees of mutual assistance and support with other countries, not only the United States. And then we go to the sub-issue of the Mutual Defense Treaty, which is the Visiting Forces Agreement. And to me, the Visiting Forces Agreement is an aberration caused by the absolute ban on foreign troops in our territory because of the 1987 Constitution. Note that it does not ban only foreign bases, but foreign troops, unless there is a treaty and recognized as such by the other country. To me, that really hampers the country, particularly in disaster response operations, when you need all sorts of military people in here to help us.
Do you have any message to our government and then also to our fishermen?
I think our government is doing its level best, both the legislature and the president, the vice president. Let's maintain that momentum. Let's exploit the goodwill also that we are generating from other countries. And for our fisher folk, report po lagi tayo ng mga intrusions kung meron. Kami po ay nagpapasalamat po sa inyo na patuloy ninyong ginagawa itong mahirap at mapanganib na gawain para mapakain po tayo ng protina na kinakailangan ng ating bansa.
Thank you, Secretary Gilbert, Gibo, Teodoro. And this is the way forward. When people think of the ocean, they think fish. But did you know that this is so much more than that? The Philippines' exclusive economic zone covers an estimated 2.2 million square kilometers of water. This makes up 82% of our territories. And yet, it was only this year when the Philippine Rural Reconstruction Movement defined the Philippines as a maritime archipelagic nation, or MANA. In this three-part special, we explore what the blue economy is about and dive deep into the Philippines' unexplored potential. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno, and this is The Way Forward.
PRRM has spent over 7 decades in rural development. We were biased in favor of farmers, and the fisherfolk told us, food is not just rice, it is also fish. The Philippines is more than 300,000 square kilometers of land, Our exclusive economic zone is 2.2 million square kilometers. We are the 15th largest fishing nation in the world. The Philippines is a maritime and archipelagic nation or MANA. Mana natin ito. We must defend it.